It's Wednesday.
And you're live here on Facebook and YouTube.
Okay. All right. And then I think we're
Yay.
also live on
You
Instagram.
are
Yeah.
live on Instagram.
Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Thanks for joining us for part 2 now of our health and wellness series. This is the mental health fall series, and we're into our second portion of the series of talks that we're having. If you were here for part 1, we talked about creating awareness. This was an understanding of what allows us to make certain decisions in regards to our health. And the first step is really creating that awareness. And today we're going to dive into part 2, which is a shift in thought. So when you have awareness, what do you do with that awareness? And then how can you actually shift your thoughts so that they're aligned with what it is you want to create in terms of your health and your life? And then part 3 is going to consist of committed action. So
the first thing you do is celebrate the fact that you've got awareness.
Yes, yes. So before we actually start, I just want to make sure that we introduce ourselves, just in case this is someone's first time tuning in. So this is our guest today. And Crystal, if you would, just tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you dedicate yourself to? And why is this a topic that you're so passionate about?
Yeah. My name is Crystal Catalina, and I'm a licensed mental health professional as well as certified in nutrition and personal training. And I am the owner and founder of Being and Becoming in Alignment Wellness Coaching. It is a mental health approach to fitness and nutrition. And really the reason I'm so passionate about it is because my background is in mental health, and I became really passionate about nutrition and fitness and physical health when COVID hit. I got really serious about it in regard to my own physical wellness. And throughout my journey, I realized how much my mental health background really helped me to transform my own body physically.
Mm-hmm.
And I see in this coaching space, in the coaching arena, there's really not enough mental health emphasis on let me do something about this. It's up to me to make the change and to be the disruptor in this arena.
Got it.
To bring mental health into the space.
And make it something that people, it's not a stigma. It's not something that they should be ashamed to talk about, and really understand that it's a key component to their overall healing process.
Yes.
And their health.
It's really part of the whole ecosystem of health.
Right.
It's all encompassing.
Amazing. So, again, for those of you that are tuning in, hello, welcome. I am Dr. Latino Feliz, the founder of the Movement Therapy Institute. I own a physical therapy holistic practice in Davie, Florida. And I'm also very passionate about healing. And typically people come to see me when they have physical ailments, so orthopedic or sports injuries. But I've noticed in the years of going through physical therapy that there is that mental component. And it is so important to talk about the behavior changes that need to take place in order for us to really have and create these new habits that are going to be long-term. So thank you so much for being here. I want to say you're going to see me kind of looking straight ahead and looking off to the side here. And I'm just checking to make sure that if you all want to be a part of this conversation too, if you have any questions, any comments, if you would give me a little wave, send out a little heart, let me know where you're from. We'd love to tune in to our listeners. And I also want to hear your feedback too. So if you found this insightful, if you found this helpful, if you're like, you know what, I remember going through a certain experience that sparked up, anything, please feel free to share it with us and also share with your friends. So let's go ahead and talk about, I'm looking here and it's not there, but that's okay. That's okay. Okay. So going into our conversation today with shift in thought. So the first thing we're going to talk about is identifying thoughts and radical acceptance. So I want to talk about that word, radical acceptance. And I want you all to think about when you hear radical acceptance, what comes up for you, right? So in regards to identifying the thoughts that in this case are not going to be productive, let's just call it, not productive thoughts, or thoughts that can get in our way when it comes to making the decisions that we need to make.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly is is an issue that comes up when we talk about radical acceptance, and what does that look like?
So when we first become aware of the issues, it can feel a lot like we've pulled all the skeletons out of the closet. It can feel like we've just made a total mess of the entire room. And it's just like,
Yeah.
it can be a shock to the system.
So can you give us an example of what that would look like in real life? So let's say in my case, I have someone, an athlete that comes in and has a low back injury, or and this person's coming in and they're like, I don't know what I did, but now it's like compromising my ability to play basketball, and then the thoughts of that person going through whatever they're going through, like if this is going to affect their senior year, if they're in high school, their ability to have a scholarship in college, like all these thoughts coming in of fear, or like, I know I'm going to heal, but am I going to heal in the right amount of time? So in that situation, what would radical acceptance look like?
It would look like taking a deep breath and figuring out, just creating acceptance for where we're at right now, while not catastrophizing, like not creating stories that aren't necessarily true. Like just observing the facts and accepting the facts without creating stories for the future. It doesn't mean that we're not going to heal. It doesn't mean we're not going to have opportunities in the future.
Right.
They might not be within the time frame that we originally planned or hoped for.
So that's so important, because sometimes it is making that call when an athlete, either in the beginning of their season, suffers an injury that could seem as if they're not going to finish that season, or it interrupts the first few games, and being able to accept that in that moment in time, it's not appropriate for them to play as their body heals, and then being able to accept whatever that injury is without creating a story or a narrative behind anything other than what it is you're going through at that moment in time.
Yes. And it's so easy to do. Like, I just want to normalize this for everyone, because it's a very human thing to do. The brain wants to keep us safe and in comfort.
Meaning it's not easy to shift, but it's easy to go into that negative mindset, or think that, oh my gosh, how long is it going to take to heal? Or just kind of feel like a heaviness or a resistance to what is happening.
Yeah,
right?
That fear is so normal. It really is. It's up to us to push against that initial reaction, though.
Yeah.
And to become aware of, okay, this is not helpful.
Yeah.
Right now, this is not helpful.
Right. Or
What
the
can I do?
frustration that we feel, because I sometimes I'll have patients that, as they start the physical therapy program, they start feeling better into week 1, into week 2. And then it's like, oh, I've gone through a few days without having any pain. And then they test it. Then it's like an exacerbation. And it's like, I'm so frustrated. This isn't working. And then it's just like really teaching them and understanding how to navigate those waves mentally of what is going on and how we deal with those obstacles, or not even an obstacle, but really what comes with the territory of us,
of an injury.
Sure. And I'm sure you probably see that too with someone maybe starting, not a diet, but maybe altering what they eat or what they drink, and maybe realizing that, okay, they know that they need to make a shift because they want to be healthier. And, I'll just use myself as an example. I went to the doctor and they're like, oh, you have high cholesterol. I'm like, what? High cholesterol, it runs in my family. But I knew that I was eating more dairy than I should have. And I was like, all right. I kind of have to lay off the cheese, and realizing that I love cheese. Does anybody else love cheese?
I do.
And I went through a period where I totally gave it up, but then it's just like, what if I kind of just sprinkle it in there? So I give that example because I think it's important for people to realize that we are going to have those moments where it's just like, okay, I have to make a decision. And the resistance that I have towards a decision is almost part of that process. Yeah. And then to recognize that I'm having that difficulty, and then just choosing what I need to do to take care of myself, choosing the decision that I need to make in order to overcome that mental block in a way.
You accepted it. You accepted it.
Yeah. The reality was that my blood work did come back with a high cholesterol, and then it improved. I brought it back down, but in that moment it was just like, oh yeah, So let's keep looking at the evidence of success and a boost in confidence. What can we learn when we talk about, you had mentioned learning from failure, and specifically
Yes.
what would you say in regards to that?
So, a lot of times when the negative tape is playing, what can be really helpful
Mhm.
is to put your thought on trial.
Mhm.
Because with every thought, there is certainly a seed of truth. The
Mhm.
seed of truth is coming from our past experiences, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to repeat.
Yeah.
So, putting the thought on trial to say, okay, well, what is the evidence of this tape that's playing?
You mean
know,
of the stream of thought?
Yeah. So,
Okay. So kind of seeing it like a movie
this will
that's
never work, or I'm so weak, or whatever. Like,
Mhm.
okay, well, what's the evidence of your strength?
Right.
It's easy to think about all the times that you've been weak because we are hardwired to think of all the things that are wrong. It's part of our survival instinct.
Yeah.
So putting your thought on trial to say, okay, well, what's the evidence against that thought?
I love that.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned too before lesson extraction.
Oh,
Talk to us
yes.
about that.
Yeah. So, with every experience, there's a learning opportunity.
Mhm.
So what's the lesson that we can extract from this experience so that we might do it better next time? I know for me, my last injury was with kettlebell swings.
Yeah.
And I never dreamed I would hurt myself with kettlebell swings. I
Yeah.
mean, I knew they were a risky movement, but
Right.
I also kind of consider myself a form Nazi. Like, I'm
Mhm.
very particular about my form.
Right. Right.
And so it just blew me away that I hurt myself in that way.
Yeah.
So I really just had to take a step back and accept that, okay, from here moving forward, okay, it was a 90-minute class.
Yeah.
And it was at the end of the class, and I
Mhm.
must have just gotten sloppy, for lack of a better
Right.
term.
Or sometimes things happen too. I think that, a lot of times some people are like, oh, you always want to find that it factor, or like what was that contributing event that created then the injury, which is good to debrief. But there's so many factors that can go into really identifying, like what it was,
Yeah.
and then once it happens, it's like, okay, what do we do with what is, right?
Yes.
So
I think for me, the lesson extraction really is just really being mindful
Mhm.
with every movement. Every time I'm working out, I'm
Mhm.
grateful for the opportunity to be able to move
Mhm.
my body in that way.
Yeah.
And I need to stay present with that movement
Mhm.
and not be thinking about, oh, class is over. What am I going to be doing in this next moment?
Right,
What am I
right.
going to,
But be there, be in the
Yeah.
moment with what it is you're doing. I love that.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
really taking a hard look at whatever happened with a fine tooth comb, and okay, I'm willing to take responsibility
Mhm.
and learn from this for the next time.
Right. And I think that in taking responsibility, it's important to understand how we do that, because I've seen on the other end when people come in and it's kind of like a dialogue of like, oh, I didn't do my exercises, or there's like a blaming or a shaming or a feeling less than because either life got too busy or they just forgot or they were afraid to do the exercise. And then it was like, I feel safer doing it here because I didn't want to do anything. I didn't know if I was doing it right or wrong at home,
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's also understanding like where we are and then being able to recognize certain patterns of how we've dealt with things and being willing to then say, you know what, taking the accountability, taking it with grace,
Mhm.
right? And being like, no, I didn't do my exercises, and owning it. Not to say that you're going to be proud of not doing what you want to do, what you committed to doing, but recognizing that there are going to be seasons and things that happen, and you can, extend that grace to yourself.
Yeah.
And then be able to choose better and do a little better next time.
Compassionate flexibility.
Compassion and flexibility. I love that. So when we talk about shifting thoughts, so this is just to kind of lay out the context, right? And this is specifically with being able to shift into a more healthier, stronger version of ourselves.
Yes.
So in the context of physical therapy, when people come to see me, I'm talking specifically about the person who is overcoming an injury, or my wellness clients that are no longer injured and they feel good and they want to then participate in the next marathon, knowing that the previous one they were injured. And so how can we participate in the same thing and then maybe PR, maybe take it to the next level? And in your case, working with clients on a nutrition, health, and wellness, reaching those goals of maybe they've tried 3 or 4 times to lose the weight or to be able to get stronger, and then they can't quite break that pattern. So one of the things that can also happen is when we start to stack. So overcoming paralysis by overanalysis. And I want to talk about this a little bit and then hear your thoughts. So stacking, I came across this this concept. I had taken a personal development course, and then what tends to happen is we kind of build the problem on top of another problem on top of another problem, where it's like, okay, I can't, I hurt my back because, or let's say a knee injury, right? So this person likes to run, and then it's like, okay, they like to run, but now they hurt their knee and they can't run. And then now that they can run, everything is overwhelming because they use their running to be able to cope with their stress. Mm-hmm. And then their kid is sick, and then their husband is also, I don't know, has something else going on. And then it's just like not just one issue at a time, but now it becomes so many things. So how in the world do I have time to make a physical therapy appointment, let alone commit to a program that I'm going to go to consistently and be able to navigate all these issues, or not even issues, but all these variables, so that you can be successful at that. So sometimes what happens is that we overanalyze a situation before you've even taken the step to call a physical therapist, because you're trying to figure out, how am I going to do this? Yeah. And then you don't do anything at all. Right. And then because you don't do anything at all, now your knee is getting worse, and your hip is getting worse, and your back is becoming an issue. And then all of a sudden your foot was fine, and for some reason the foot is starting to hurt. So by the time people come to see me, it's like, okay, so what have you got going on? So it started in the knee, and then it's like this hip, this back, this knee, this foot. And then it's like, all right, you know what? Let's take a step back and then really kind of understand. And for any of you that are athletic trainers, physical therapists, coaches, have you seen this where it's not just one thing, but it's like it started off as one area, and now it's kind of grown, and then being able to address that and really holding people high, because I think it's so important. Where as a medical provider, and I've heard from patients where they go to doctors and the doctor's like, well, why did you take so long to come in? It's like that person doesn't need to hear that at this point. No, they do not. So if you've gone through that scenario, it's an understanding, that you're choosing the provider that's willing to listen. Yeah. That is taking the time to be mindful with you and to really hear you out, and then to hold you accountable to be able to create the shift that you need to create. Yes. Right?
Through baby steps.
So exactly, taking one step. So what have you seen when it comes to stacking, and that what can we do when we're in that overanalysis, where we what can we tell ourselves to then, start that train moving in the direction that we want?
The best thing really is to try to simplify, to really get down to it and have blinders on. And instead of looking at this whole staircase of all the things that have stacked on top of one another, let's look down at just the first step. And let's identify what that first step is.
So how do you do that?
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Yeah. So really looking for the lowest hanging fruit that feels the easiest to make a shift in. Because once you identify that easiest thing that doesn't feel overwhelming, then you can take that step. And as you take that one step over and over and build consistency with just focusing on that one thing, then you've got some momentum rolling, and you've got some confidence, your confidence starts to build
because
as
you've
you
done
show-
you've done the one thing
You've
already.
done the one thing multiple times. You've got
Mhm.
that momentum rolling. And so now we might try to take that second step.
Mhm. So if we were to put that in like a scenario with someone that you're working with, right? Someone that's a new client of yours and they've told you, you know, what they want. They want to be able to, let's just say, like lose 20 pounds and to be able to participate in like a recreational sport. Like, where do they start?
Yeah, there's so many factors that go into
Mhm.
it.
And
But
that's the thing, but I think it's important for us to be able to discuss this because when people like tell me like, you know, I have a foot issue, like where do I even start? You know, and it's just like, you know what, let's talk about it.
yeah,
And then once you can talk about and kind of get an idea of what's the inventory of your life now, the first step looks like maybe just doing these 3 exercises and making sure you get enough sleep.
yeah, I
You
would
know?
really start first in the mind. Everything I do,
For you.
everything in life starts in the mind.
Mhm.
So really, I would probably ask why. Why is that important to you? Because
Mhm.
when we can identify our why, then it helps propel us forward.
The
to show
emotional
up.
factor, right?
Yeah,
So
'cause
then
we're motivated by emotion.
okay.
Mhm.
So once you've identified the why, then what's the next actionable step?
Mm.
Because I think that we can talk about a why, and I'm just kind of sharing some of the people that I work with. Not always the case, but for those of you that are athletes, it's like you kind of want to get stuff done and go right into it. And the talking of the emotions and feelings is like, I got time for that. Even though we know it's
That's the hardest
important.
part.
Even though we know it's
Yeah.
important. So it's first identifying the why, because that's what's going to drive the decision-making process.
Mhm.
And then what's next?
And then we would start with crystallizing what that future self looks like, looks and feels like.
Okay. So you actually dive into, you know, what that person, the goal, and then the feeling behind the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, what's that actionable step?
And then what's the actionable step? What feels doable? What feels doable? I mean, are you like, how overweight are they? You know, we might start with just walking 5 minutes a day. I mean, it all depends on where
Right.
they're at.
Because you're looking for that long-term shift too.
Yeah.
I love that because it reminds me of, you know, and I'll be honest with patients where I ask them, okay, realistically, how much time can you allocate to doing these exercises? Because I have people that are like, no, I want an hour of whatever it is I need to do and tell me what I've got to do to get better. And then other people that are like, listen, I've got 4 kids and I don't have any time, but I can squeeze in a 15 to 20 minute to start. And I'm like, I will take that and we will work with that. Right.
Yes.
Because sometimes I think some people feel like in the season that they're in at the moment, it almost feels like insurmountable.
It feels impossible. And I just want to let everyone know anything is possible in the absence of resistant thought.
Ooh, say that again.
Anything is possible in the absence of resistant thought. In resistant thought is where we get caught up.
Right, when we think that it's just like we can't do this, or it's just like, how in the world am I going to? It's almost like the feeling of resistance to accomplishing the task.
Yeah, it's like giving up before you even start. And if you're taking actionable steps and you're doubting yourself, then you're already pinching yourself off from the possibility of what you're wanting.
You know, that reminds me, I did a meditation and I love to share the meditations that I do. So anytime you've been on the Movement Therapy Institute, if you're following me on Dr. Ada Latino Feliz, I'll post the meditations that I do. And I did one and they talked about, no, I think it was a run with a Nike running app. And the owner or the founder of what's the app for health, Headspace.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
Headspace.
Love Headspace.
So he talked about running with unobstructed focus, you know, and realizing that we have the ability to train our minds to be unobstructively focused.
Yes.
And not to say that we're not going to have thoughts come in, but to choose that path of like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what's possible. and this is what's next.
It's a discipline and it's a
Mhm.
practice. It is. It
Mhm.
takes practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love the ladder analogy too, of seeing all these steps. Like you've got to be able to kind of go through all these steps to get to the goal, but then just looking down and seeing like, okay, what's the step that I can take today?
Now. Yes.
All right, so let's keep this conversation going. Catastrophizing, you mentioned that. And also I want to talk about, cognitive distortion. So these are words that if we can simplify them to the public, like what, when someone mentions this idea of like, what exactly is catastrophizing?
Yeah, it's overgeneralizing and assuming the worst.
Nobody
the
does
worst
that.
possible outcome, which we all do that, like
It's like
our
a
brains
fear,
go there.
right?
Yeah, or
Mhm.
like saying, "Oh, I'm always this," or
That's how I am.
that's just right.
That's
like
just
a
how I am.
story of
That's just
like
how I am.
we're beating the drum of like this is just always how it is. This is what always happens to me. I'm so clumsy. I'm so da da da. Like, what are you affirming for yourself? What stories have you been saying that aren't necessarily, they're just beliefs. Beliefs are just practice thoughts. You've done a whole lot of reps, like in the gym building muscle. You've done a whole lot of reps on a specific thought and it's turned into a belief. It doesn't make the belief true.
Right. And it's understanding. In a way, sometimes I think that they're almost like lies. They're like, wait, no, that's not the truth. That's not the truth. And what are you engaging in? So cognitive distortion.
Yeah. So
in simple terms, how would you describe that?
Overgeneralizing. There's a bunch of different categories of cognitive distortion, but it's basically cognitive just means brain or thought, right? So it's a distorted thought. It's a not necessarily true thought.
For example, if I hurt my shoulder and I think that, and I had someone tell me this, like, I feel like the tendon is ripping off the bone. And then they went to the doctor and that was not the case whatsoever. But it was like the belief that pain was tissue damage. And it's important to know that pain does not always equal tissue damage. And in the same way that when we have fears of not being able to accomplish a task, or like, is my shoulder pain ever going to go away? Am I going to have to live with this forever?
Yeah.
Kind of having those beliefs that life is only available in that way.
Yeah. I remember one that you told me as I was walking out and I was like in so much pain. You were like, remember, you are not fragile. And I'm like, I still repeat that on the daily. Like I repeat that when I go into the gym and I'm doing something like I'm a little, oh, I know this is going to require my back, you know?
Yeah.
But I just like focus on my form, tighten my core and remind myself that I'm not fragile. And it really is about that mind-body connection going into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we have those fears, which it's a normal process of being a human, you're going to have some form of resistance that comes up. But the cool thing is that as we start to recognize those triggers, it's less and less.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, it's there. And
there it
I'm
is.
moving forward.
There it is.
And
become
like,
aware and then choose different.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of brings me to like better language, better thought.
Yes.
I love, Crystal and I have met to kind of discuss what it is we're going to talk about. And when you mentioned this, I was like, I've got to write that down. Better language, better thought. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. It's so important to be intentional with your language. Words have power. Words have a frequency. And I really believe this is why I speak really slow.
We have different personalities. Clearly, sometimes I feel like I purposefully have to tell myself to slow down because it helps me kind of organize my thoughts. But naturally, and I see it when I speak with my daughter, and she's the same, where she's just like, it's like, okay. All right.
Yeah. So when you take the time to slow down and really think about what words you want to use, it makes such a difference in your healing trajectory.
In what way?
Because as you use more quality language, it translates and manifests physically in the body.
Yeah.
Because again, everything starts in the mind. So choosing those quality thoughts is going to trickle down to quality emotion, because everything you think causes you to feel a certain kind of way.
Yeah.
And as you start to feel better, then you start to feel better externally as well. And you start to do better. That translates into your actions as well.
I love that. So if I hear you, let's say I'm about to do, let's say, a squat, and I know that squats in the past have been painful to my back, or someone told me that I shouldn't be squatting, right? Because sometimes you'll be told by a medical professional, not me, that you shouldn't squat, right? And then it's just like, well, this person told me, this person that I trust told me not to squat. It's hurt in the past when I squat.
Yeah.
I've tried to squat and it hurts. And now you're asking me to do the thing that I don't do.
And then how are you stepping up for it? Are you stepping up for it going, oh, here we go again. Oh, I hope, you know, what tape is going on? Or are you stepping up saying, I am not fragile. I know proper form.
And I can do this.
I can do this.
Yeah, I'm ready for this. I prepared myself. I have, you know, I call it that exposure to stress, right? We're in a good way, right? Because load is stress and we want to load the body. You're doing it anyways when you get up and roll out of bed and do whatever it is you need to do. If you have kids, you're picking them up and, you know, they can be heavy sometimes. So we're already doing it. And then are we aware of how we're doing it? And that the reality is, you know, pain happens within us. We know that it's perceptive to the individual. And then realizing that we're not fragile, we're very robust beings, and to be able to give the body the opportunity to keep at it.
Oof, yes,
So,
the opportunity.
Tools to shift once we become aware. Yeah. So, you know, we talked about before compassion, flexibility, taking these small steps, starting the process and being aware of the language that we use.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you found? Because I think that, you know, when we use the word compassion, I'd imagine that people kind of can view it in different, you know, in different facets, but typically not something that comes very natural to a lot of people, especially when it comes to compassion within yourself.
Really, so much of what we're doing in life does not come naturally. Like anything that we want to get better at, like the process of self-development is
the growth,
not natural.
Right.
So
it's like growing pains.
Yeah. So the willingness to lean into practicing, becoming aware of what we're thinking and shifting that language a little over time and not beating ourselves up every time we become aware that we're thinking something unhelpful.
Right. Especially if you've trained yourself to do that for so many years.
Yes.
You know, I had written here, thoughts generate emotion and emotion generates action. And we're motivated by emotion unless we are disciplined.
That's it.
Right.
That's it. It's the retraining of the mind. Just like
versus being led by your emotion.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then dealing with those emotions that come up when identifying what's keeping us from shifting perspective. Because I think sometimes we get caught up in this emotion of like, I'm scared, or I'm this frustration, almost anger too, when you're just like, I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing. Why am I not getting better?
This is so hard.
This is so hard. And then realizing that in and of itself is keeping you from shifting your perspective, right?
Yes. So surrendering to the shift.
Let's dive into that, because pushing into discomfort again and again and again is not easy.
No.
And what about the threshold and our capacity to be able to handle that discomfort?
Yeah.
Or sometimes even the level of pain. I'm gonna switch that. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry.
We got a low battery.
All right.
The understanding your capacity and your threshold for discomfort, understand that your tolerance is kind of like a muscle to where it can grow too.
Mm-hmm.
So the more you expose yourself to that discomfort, you're going to become more resilient.
Yeah. Meaning you're going to be able to tolerate and withstand some of that
Discomfort
Right.
that's required for the
To
growth.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we know it helps us to grow. We need to understand that distress tolerance, right?
Yes.
And what is the harmonization of discomfort and growth? So how much is enough? Or
Yeah.
how much is too much?
I think it really goes along with knowing yourself
Mhm.
and practicing mindfulness, because
Mhm.
as you practice mindfulness, you get to know your own body sensations, what you're able to handle.
Mhm.
And it's not like that little like
Yeah.
voice that's like, oh, you can't handle this. It's like you really get to know yourself. To
Mhm.
where you're like, okay, I can choose, it might vary by the day. I can handle
Yeah.
this much discomfort today, but I've got some other pre-existing vulnerability factors
Mm.
today, and I can't handle that much discomfort
Right.
today.
Right.
So it's really about flowing through it day by day.
And I think it's so important. And I love this interdisciplinary conversation because I think it's so important for us to kind of bring in our gifts and talents. And I have found personally in working with different patients, all facets of life, that having a mental coach, whether it's a sports psychologist, a licensed social worker, someone that is equipped in allowing us to navigate our mind and really using it to our leverage. In the
Yes.
same way that I can teach someone how to move and optimize their body, you are teaching them that optimization of the mind. And then together, I personally think it's so important for everyone to have a mental health coach and someone in the arena of mental health to be able to help us navigate these conversations in our own minds. And I'm not sure about you guys, but in hearing all this, I'm just like, this is amazing. And I'm going to come back and actually listen to it because I find these so valuable, just even for myself in terms of where I am in life right now. And you may not be going through pain, but maybe you're an entrepreneur, or maybe you're a mom, or maybe you're someone that's new to the city and you're trying to kind of feel it out, make new friends while you're still adjusting to a new job. I think that when we go through these life transitions, there's so many things that we can apply what we learn to our
Yes.
wellness to the rest of our life.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, it all runs parallel.
So to wrap up, there's a couple of points that I want to discuss. Being gentle with the self-talk, right? What's a baby step out of that negative talk loop?
Yeah, I think that like affirmations are kind of a buzzword right now. And affirmations can feel really fake. Now, while there's some value in that, because like I said, a belief is just a practice thought. So
Yeah.
there's value in practicing the affirmation.
Mhm.
It can be really helpful to baby step the affirmation with intentional language, with more gentle language, meaning like if I'm really sad, then I'm not going to say, I'm so happy today. Like, I'm in the
that's
process,
fake.
right? Like,
yeah.
I'm in the process of feeling better.
Versus like, I'm sad.
Yeah.
And all
Like,
the time, like, I'm really sad right now. I don't feel good. I don't feel like smiling. I don't feel like saying that I feel okay because I don't feel okay.
yeah, but I'm showing
I'm in
up
the
for
process.
myself. I'm willing to show up for myself so that I can feel better in the future.
I love that. Yeah. Our brain likes to make up stories according to the past, and it's not necessarily true. The brain seeks comfort and safety.
Yeah.
So in knowing this, when you come up against a struggle or something that seems a challenge or resistance to that, it's almost like when I hear that, it's almost like expecting my brain to go into that fear mode. Like it's what it does. It's like, all right, okay, and I see you and I hear you, and no, we're going to go this way.
And that's why I think that education is so important, because when we're aware of that's just our brain's biology, it's not, oh, something's wrong with me. It's just, this is just me as a human, what happens.
Right. And then I think it sets us apart too when it comes to if you're listening to this and you're in grad school, you're in med school. My nieces are going to be heading to PA school. And one of them recently we did our first duathlon, and she had never done a race like that. And there was a natural fear initially, but then it's just like, no, we did this. And then she finished it. And it's like, holy cow, like we got it done. And now we're talking about doing a half marathon, you know?
Amazing.
So you can apply it to different areas of your life and know that it's healthy fear. It's meant to keep you safe, but then also once you've accounted for the safety, it's going to elevate you to a next level in terms of strength
Absolutely.
or endurance or
And
getting
then
you out of pain.
It's evidence later down the line. If you start going into some kind of negative loop, you can go back to that.
And see all the good things that you've done and everything that you've accomplished.
Yeah.
I love that. I love it. In the incorrect story, the brain is seeking safety and comfort, when in reality, it's keeping you from moving forward and taking action.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then, so once we have the awareness, which was the first part of this talk, which if you didn't catch it, don't worry, we have the replay. If you go on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, there is a replay for the first part of this chat. The second conversation, we dove into a shift in thought, actionable steps that you can take in order to identify how to go from not just awareness, but to actually shifting into the perspective that serves you to be able to then execute and move in the direction that you want to in terms of addressing either your pain, weight loss, your overall health, and being able to be the most optimal version of yourself. And the last part of our talk series, get excited, which on purpose, we did this right before the holidays because we know that this season, for whatever reason, it really, people get revved up. So the next step is committed action. Excited to talk to you all about that, and then dive into that conversation in regards to taking actionable steps, being committed to the steps so that you can reach your goals and then be able to live the life that you deserve.
Yes.
Any closing thoughts or anything that you want to add?
Just thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for being open to this. I know that a lot of times we really just want to get into the action. And the idea here really is to take a step back and become aware, because awareness really is the first step to change. And then once you are aware, you got to start working inside before outside.
Yeah, I love that. Working inside, in here, to then be able to take the action so you can take out into the world.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate your time, your energy. Again, if you found this valuable, go ahead and give us a like, post a couple comments, share it with your friends, and we will be tuning in shortly, not today, but we'll send out some information in regards to our next talk. It'll be before the holiday season, and we hope you have a good night. Take care, everyone. Bye. All right.